This is section 4.4 of the Italian Access Redo box. And in this one, this is the final, and absolutely, I mean final one. So what we're going to try to do over here is we're going to hinge the box. And that's always been a problem for me on how to hinge, but I think I got this pretty well pat now, so maybe you'll learn something on this one. And then we're going to go through the oiling of the box and maybe just a general description at the end, and maybe doing something with the trays. Because I've had other videos, I'm sure you've seen them, of how I produce the trays. So there's no sense to go over all of that. And I have some videos about how to do the rest of this stuff. But this is one box from start to finish. So let's get on with it. Let's finish this box and put it on the shelf somewhere. Okay, so before I go ahead and oil this box, I'm going to do a hinge. So hinging is my bane. I really have a hard time hinging. So for hinges, I use these high point stop hinges. I really like them, and they're dependable as far as I'm concerned, and they fit the size box that I'm going to do. Now, a lot of people don't use these. They use the piano hinges, and that's fine. But you know, I'm more into the art than I am into the actual hinging system. So in order to get these things consistent, I made a small little jig, and what these do is you just put them on the end of the box, and that's the position that I'm going to put the hinge. So I'm just going to drill some pilot holes, and bang, there, that's done. Move it over to the other side. Done. See how easy that was? And then these are no fault. Now, since the top is not bigger than that, you have a problem, because this is going to sit below the level, so it's going to interfere. So what I did is I came up and put up on the laser these small little 1/32 of an inch frames. And what they do is they'll lift the hinge up just a little bit, and they also provide a little bit of decor. But like I said before, I do everything with a jig. So I also have another jig just to use for these. So I'll put a little bit of glue on here. Put them approximately in place. And then with this jig, all I got to do is put it in the general area, and that's the position that they're going to be in. And then I repeat that for this other side. Just put a little bit of glue on. Doesn't have to be much, because the hinge will hold down the rest of it. Set up my jig again, make sure that that's right. And voila, I'm done. So the next step is I got to drill these holes a little bit deeper, and I'll put the screws in. But I'll just let this dry out for about half an hour, and we'll get back to that one. So we had a few minutes for it to go ahead and dry out. So the next thing we're going to do is put in the hinges for a test fit. So I use candle wax, and I just rub a little bit of wax on the candle. On the screw. And then manually, wow, wait a minute, we haven't done this, I'm sorry. Let's drill a little bit deeper first. Okay, so that should finish that up. Now I lost my screw. No, there it is. Oh, I'm doing really good today. So let's put that in there. And you could drive this with a regular screwdriver, electronic screwdriver, drill or something. But I find it easier just to go ahead and screw it manually. Okay, and I don't tighten them all the way down. I just do it enough. So put the wax on. Get these pre-positioned. So we'll get the wax on. And get the wax on. Okay, well, I'm going to screw these down. Now I'll fast forward this. Okay, so now we got that. I move it here. Now next thing to do is want to loose this so that it moves a little bit. Here it is. Feels a little bit to me. Okay. Next, right. I'm going to put the top on. So what we need to do is I put 2 coats of tape on, masking tape. And I found that this works pretty good. So then when I put on the top, now we've got to make sure that the sides are even here, and we're flush on the back. Okay, that looks pretty good. And then all we need to do is just, we can do one of 2 things. But this is the really critical step, is putting in this first hole. Okay, because that's the one that's going to guide everything. If this is wrong, then more than likely all of the others will be wrong as well. So we'll put that in. These screws just seem to be a little bit bigger than I'm used to for some reason. But let's go over to the side over here. Make sure you're still even. Tighten that one down. Okay, that's good to me. All right. And now we're going to do this other one. Put 1 screw in only. And this will be a test fit. Okay. See if that works. It seems to. Nice. I think we did fairly good. There's a little bit of adjustment you can do, but for the most part, this one fits. So I'm going to put a little bit of a relief on the front, I think. But that's what it's all about. Now I just got to drill, put the other ones in. I'm done hinging. And then I can take it all apart again to do my oiling. This next step is fun because what we're going to do is we're going to take a router bit and we're going to go along the whole periphery here to make a little bit of a tray. And that tray is where we're going to put the bottom. So here we go. The shield just prevents it from going onto my shop. So I now have a nice little routed groove on the bottom that I can put my bottom on. And lots of chips. So I cut out the bottom using my program after I routed it and glued it and put some pin nails in just to hold it in place during the time it dries. So now this is done, the bottom is fairly done, and it's ready for oiling, and that'll be the next step on the bottom. Well, maybe I gotta hinge it. I'll probably put the hinges on first. The next step was putting in the tray stops. So I'm going to be putting in 2 trays, and you have to put in some stops, otherwise the trays won't sit. So what I do is I just cut some real thin strips and I put them on the side, and what I do is I measure from the top to the bottom, and then I subtract 1.4 inches. And the reason for that is the trays that I make are exactly 1 inch tall, 25.4 centimeters. So that will sit on top of this first piece of wood. And it'll leave enough room that if I put a mirror on the cover, it's not going to bump into the jewelry or whatever they put on the tray. The second one is I put a little bit of a ledge here and an insert. So again, I go from 3.5, which is this measurement. This is about 5 inches minus 1.4, that gives me 3.6 or something like that inches. So that's the length of this particular piece. I then subtract from this length another 1.4 inches, and that gets me where I need to be on the height of this next bottom piece. And I cut that in there because I got 2 trays. The second tray on the bottom, I like to have it sitting on a ledge. I don't know why, it's not really required, but I like to do that. So in order to do that, I have to do one other thing. I take this piece that I measured, which is 1.4 inches or 1.3 inches away from the top of this one, and subtract the width of how thick this particular piece is. And then that gets me my ledge to do here. And then I repeat that procedure for the other side, and voila, I have my ledges to sit for my trays. Okay, so the first coat of oil is on, and we're going to try to put a second coat on, maybe even a third coat, but we'll go with another coat. So we'll take the Danish oil again, pour it on, wipe. We're not trying to get it off, we're just trying to work it into all of the wood as much as possible. We don't want to wipe it off. We just want to wipe it on. Now we'll just do the back real quick. Oak usually, which is what this back stuff is, works really well with the oil. Okay, so it gives us that. And we'll just do on top again. Wipe the back, wipe on top again. Now we'll take a look on the inside and see what we missed. We didn't miss much, but it's a little bit harder to get all of the corners. So the next step I do is I take a little Danish oil on the Q-tip and just work the areas that I think I missed. And it gets them in the corners, in these little recesses. right up against the edge here. Up on top. Yeah, I go overboard sometimes, but it's worth it. The finished product is, after all, represents me. So I want the finished product to be as good as I can do to it. So, okay. Let's look in here. Yeah, it's really a thirsty wood. It's absorbing lots of oil. So we're not going to wipe anything off yet. We're going to allow the wood to soak up the oil. Okay. And we'll let that go for another maybe 10 minutes this time, and then we'll just wipe it off. And that would be it. So any excess oil at that time period is excess oil, and we'll just take care of that by wiping it out of there. Now, a trick that everybody should know, Wacom oil is air reacted. So if you want to be able to get this lid off again, make sure you wipe with a clean area and get the inside of the cap and the outside of the cap clean. And then you'll be able to open it up again. Okay, again, we'll let this go for another 10 minutes and I'll wipe it off. Okay, next step on this box anyways is I got the back hinge done. I put the buffer in. So everything's done on the bottom and I'm ready to oil. So I sanded it down with 120, I went to 220, I went to 320, and I jumped to 600. And I finished all three sides with 600. So I'm going to be using Wacom Danish oil, and that's my go-to. I just really enjoy doing this one. So open it up, and I will use a cloth. So the first thing I do is I just pour it into inside. And then what I'll do is I'll just move it around so that it seals all of the corners. And then bring it up and try to get it as much as I can up on these. And then get it over here. And then get it flowing. And this is the last one. And there. Okay, so now I just take the cloth and I wipe it all over the place on the inside. And I make sure I get all of the areas in. You can see how dry it's going. It's soaking up the oil. And that's good. You know, let the oil soak in. And there's no such thing, I think, as too much oil. But you got to make sure that it covers everywhere. Don't let you get any spare wood. Now the front looks like it's not getting anything yet. So I'm just going to pour it onto the rag. And rub it on to the inside. Make sure I can cover all those areas too. There should be no areas that did not get some of the oil. Okay, check again. All right. Now we're ready to go to the outside. So I always do the top first. Just put some oil up there. Okay, now you just liberally, what we can do here is turn it on the side. Pour just a little bit on and wipe it in. Okay, pour it on, wipe it in. Now, same thing with the front. Just liberally pour it on. Now on the front and on the sides, I'm just going to let it sit. And we'll let that dry for about, oh, I'd say maybe a good 20 minutes. And then we'll come back and we'll do a final wipe. Or maybe we'll put another coat on. You know, it all depends. So I'll see you in 20 minutes. Okay, so one of the problems that we had with this type of wood is it's pretty damn plain. So I decided to spice it up, and what we're going to do is we're going to put some of this wood, walnut I think, around the edges like this, and that will really spice up the wood and make it look a lot better. So I'm going to do a glue up of this and we'll go from there and see how it works out. So just using our normal tight bond, I'm going to apply a liberal amount of glue. Make sure we get some even distribution. And start laying it in. And I got the wrong end, didn't I? Yes. That's okay. Okay, so that's now in place. All I got to do is clamp it and let it dry. Well, the last step on the trays is I have already cut out from leather on the laser all of the bottoms. So I've already applied my lacquer, I've done all my sanding, I'm all ready to go. Now, next thing to do is just lay in the inserts. So what I use is I use Weld Bond, this steel touch. It's kind of pricey, but it really does a good job when it holds down the leather. So I use that instead of wood glue. So to apply it, you just got to make sure that it comes down, and it's hard to come out. You just apply just a little bit in each one of these holes, like that. You don't need to have a super amount, but you just need enough to have everything tacked down. Now once that's down, the next thing you got to do is level it. And what I do for leveling is I use a couple of Q-tips. And you don't have to worry too much about, you know, getting the fur, what I call the fur, in here. You just, all you got to do is just spread it around. And you don't want to get too close to the edge, because as you'll see, you don't want it gushing out. You want it to hold down the leather, but yet still be slightly flexible. And this works out pretty good. Sometimes I screw up, but any excess, I just move on to the next box that I have. So if there's like too much, which is what I got here, I just move it on to the next box. And like I said, just try to keep it away from the edges as much as possible. Okay, and then once I got it tacked in fairly good, the next thing I do is just take my piece of leather, just lay it in. Let's do that for all of the leathers. Get it laid in. Okay, now that all the leathers are laid in, I take this tool, which is nothing more than a rounded piece of iPay, and just make sure that the leather is seated. That's all there is to it, you know. Once that's in there and it dries up, it'll look good. It doesn't smell. I've tried E6000, which is one of my favorite glues for mirrors and stuff like that. I tried to use that, but it stinks and it seems to linger. So, okay, so that's the tray. And now I'm ready to move on to this next tray, and I won't bother showing you how to do that. But it does look good. Well, if you got to this point, you went through 4 videos, and from start to finish, we put together a box. I didn't do every single step that I do, but you can see that it takes a pretty good amount of time and effort and tools and equipment to go and do this. So it's not a cheap box to make. You can go to a store and buy a $7 bass box, do something with that, but you know, if you want quality and if you really want to put artistic flair in it and something that you can sell and be proud of to put on your mantle maybe, or give it as a keepsake, this I think is one of the better boxes to do. And I'm sure any of your customers that would have this type of a box would appreciate its quality. So thank you for putting up with me for this duration, and happy box building.